The sound of rain drummed gently against the window pane, a rhythmic lullaby that should have soothed Elias, but his mind was restless. The dim glow of the kitchen light cast long shadows as he poured himself a drink, the rich amber liquid swirling in the glass. Outside, the world was drenched in silver, but inside, the air was warm with something unspoken, something dangerous. Across the room, Nathan leaned casually against the counter, his fingers tapping absently against the cool surface. He had arrived earlier that evening, luggage in tow, flashing that easy smile Elias had always known. Yet tonight, something felt different. Maybe it was the way Nathan had filled out. No longer the lanky teenager Elias had once taken fishing, but a man now, with broad shoulders and a quiet confidence that unsettled him. "Did you miss me, Uncle?" Nathan teased, his voice carrying a playful lilt. His eyes, dark knowing, lingered just a fraction longer than necessary. Elias chuckled, masking his unease behind a sip of whiskey. "Of course I did. It's been what? 5 years." "6," Nathan corrected, stepping forward, the space between them narrowing just enough to make Elias aware of the heat of his presence. "And I think you forgot to call." There was no accusation in his tone, just amusement, but Elias still felt the weight of it. Life had happened, marriage, responsibilities, the slow erosion of youthful abandon. He had meant to stay in touch, but the years had slipped away, and with them, the familiarity they once shared. Now, standing in the quiet glow of his kitchen, he felt something stir, a memory, a possibility, a warning. Nathan tilted his head, observing him. "You look good." Elias forced a smirk, shaking his head. "You must need glasses." Nathan laughed, the sound rich, effortless. "No, I mean it. Different, though. More serious." He gestured vaguely. "Married life, I suppose?" Elias hesitated before answering. "Yeah, married life." He felt the weight of the words as he said them, like a coat that had grown too heavy over time. His wife, Claire, was away for the weekend, visiting family. She had kissed him goodbye at the airport with the same practiced affection they had long perfected, neither of them lingering too long. He had told himself that was normal, that this was what love became after years of stability. Nathan's voice pulled him back. "I hope I'm not intruding. Staying here, I mean, no, not at all." Elias leaned against the counter, mirroring Nathan's posture. "It's nice having someone around. House feels too damn quiet sometimes." Nathan smiled, but there was something in his expression, something unreadable. "Then I'll do my best to keep things interesting." There was again that edge, that subtle shift in tone that made Elias feel like he was standing on the edge of something precarious. He dismissed it as nothing, as nostalgia twisting his perception. Nathan had always been bold, always testing boundaries. It didn't mean anything. They moved to the living room, the conversation flowing easily, stories of childhood mischief, of Nathan's college years, of Elias' job, which he described with the detached efficiency of a man who no longer found passion in it. Nathan, however, was electric, every word laced with energy, every movement deliberate. At some point, Nathan stretched out on the couch, his shirt riding up just enough to reveal the carved lines of his abdomen. Elias caught himself looking and quickly shifted his gaze to the fireplace. He cursed himself for the lapse, for the flicker of something inappropriate in his mind. "You're quiet," Nathan noted. Elias forced a chuckle. "Just thinking about life, time, how damn fast it all moves." Nathan studied him. "Do you ever wish you'd chosen differently?" The question landed heavier than expected. Elias exhaled, watching the ice melt in his glass. "I don't know," he admitted. Nathan hummed thoughtfully. "I do. I think about all the roads I could have taken, the people I could have been with." His gaze was steady, deliberate. "The ones I still could be." Elias felt a shift in the air, thick like the weight of an impending storm. His throat tightened. "You're young. You have time." Nathan smiled faintly, but his eyes betrayed something else, something knowing. "Maybe," he said, voice soft. "But time isn't always what we think it is." Silence stretched between them, charged with something unsaid. Elias felt his pulse in his throat, his breath uneven. The moment felt like a line drawn in sand, one that could still be erased if he walked away. But he didn't. And Nathan didn't move either. Outside, the rain fell harder, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The first mistake was letting it happen. The second was pretending it wouldn't happen again. Elias told himself that night was nothing. An old connection rekindled. Too much whiskey, the weight of nostalgia pressing in too close. But as the days stretched on, filled with Nathan's lingering glances and the quiet thrill of proximity, it became harder to ignore the tension that coiled between them, unspoken but ever present. It started with small moments, accidental touches that neither of them pulled away from, a laugh that lasted just a second too long, the way Nathan would sit too close on the couch, his knee brushing against Elias, waiting. And Elias waited too, though he wasn't sure for what. Maybe for Nathan to stop, maybe for himself to walk away. Neither of those things happened. It was late past midnight when the line finally blurred. Nathan had been flipping through an old photo album, stretched across Elias' bed as though it were his own. His bare feet dangled over the edge, his shirt unbuttoned just enough to hint at the lean muscle beneath. "You really were something back then," Nathan mused, holding up a photo of Elias in his 20s, suntanned, grinning, careless in a way that felt foreign now. Elias smirked, leaning against the doorframe. "That was a lifetime ago." Nathan tilted his head, studying him. "I don't think so. I think he's still in there, under all that responsibility." Elias swallowed, something uncomfortable twisting inside him. "Nathan, I remember looking up to you." Nathan interrupted, eyes locked onto his. "You were everything I wanted to be." Something about the way he said it, low, almost reverent, made Elias' stomach tighten. Nathan set the album aside and sat up slowly. "And then I grew up." The room felt impossibly small. Elias could hear the slow, deliberate inhales of Nathan's breath, see the way his chest rose and fell in measured anticipation. Nathan moved first, a slow, cautious shift forward, as if testing the weight of the moment. Elias could have stopped him. He should have. But he didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't think, until Nathan's lips barely grazed his, and the fragile restraint he had been clinging to snapped. The kiss was tentative at first, a question neither of them had the courage to answer aloud. But then Nathan pressed closer, and Elias felt the warmth of his body, the quiet hum of something inevitable, something he had no name for, but could no longer deny. His hands found Nathan's waist, hesitating, then holding. Nathan made a sound, a soft exhale against his lips, and something inside Elias shattered. He pulled away first, his heart pounding. "This can't happen," Elias whispered, his voice raw. Nathan's gaze flickered, searching his. "Then why did you let it?" Elias had no answer. Nathan leaned in again, slower this time, as if daring him to resist. Elias didn't. The second kiss was different. Less hesitation, more certainty. It was a mistake, but it was the kind that burned, the kind that refused to be undone. When it ended, Elias was the first to move, stepping back as if distance could erase what had just happened. Nathan studied him for a long moment. "Are you going to pretend this didn't mean anything?" Elias exhaled sharply. "It doesn't change anything." Nathan's lips curved, not quite a smile. "I think it changes everything." Elias turned away, running a hand through his hair, trying to summon the version of himself that wouldn't let this happen. The version that had a wife, a life, a future that didn't include whatever this was. But that version of himself was already slipping away. And deep down, Elias knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The affair was supposed to be a momentary lapse, a single night of weakness, buried beneath the weight of guilt and denial. But Elias had underestimated the hunger of forbidden things. What had started in hesitation soon became reckless, an unrelenting pull neither of them had the willpower to resist. They were careful at first. Whispered conversations in the dead of night. Brief touches that could be dismissed as accidental. But desire had a way of making fools out of men, turning caution into arrogance, restraint into impatience. And soon, the risk of discovery became a game they were both too eager to play. One evening, Elias sat at the dining table, phone in hand, while Claire moved around the kitchen, humming softly as she prepped dinner. She had been back for nearly a week now, and though her presence should have grounded him, should have snapped him back into the life he had built, Elias felt more untethered than ever. Across from him, Nathan scrolled idly through his phone, his foot brushing against Elias beneath the table. A small, deliberate gesture. An invitation. Elias inhaled sharply, shifting in his seat. His gaze flickered toward Claire, but she was focused on chopping vegetables, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension flooding the room. Nathan didn't move away. The moment stretched, charged with the silent dare Nathan was offering him. Then his phone vibrated. A text. Nathan *, meet me upstairs in 10 minutes. Elias' pulse spiked. He should have ignored it, should have shut this down before it went any further. But the thrill, the risk, the sheer impossibility of resisting him, it was all too intoxicating. The door had barely clicked shut behind them before Nathan was on him. Hands gripping, mouths colliding. The desperation of stolen moments made their kisses feverish, hurried. "This is insane," Elias murmured against Nathan's lips, though his hands were already pulling him closer. Nathan smirked, eyes dark with something that felt like triumph. "Then stop." Elias didn't. Minutes stretched into eternity, their bodies pressed together, the bed creaking beneath their weight. Every sound, every movement carried the danger of exposure, but that only made it more exhilarating. Then footsteps. Elias froze. Nathan sat up quickly, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand as the sound of Claire's voice echoed from the hallway. "Elias?" His heart slammed against his ribs. "Yeah," he called, voice uneven. "Dinner's ready." Nathan was already standing, adjusting his shirt, a satisfied gleam in his eyes. Elias exhaled, steadying himself before responding. "Be right there." The moment the footsteps faded, Elias shot Nathan a glare. "You're getting reckless." Nathan grinned. "You love it, and God help him." He did. But secrets had a way of unraveling. One afternoon, while Claire was out running errands, Elias sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone when a message popped up. "Nathan * you taste better when you're afraid of getting caught." Elias smirked despite himself, fingers hovering over the screen to reply, when Claire's voice startled him. "What are you smiling at?" His entire body went rigid. He turned too quickly, too guilty, locking eyes with his wife, who stood in the doorway with an arched brow. Claire was perceptive, always had been. She noticed things, small shifts in behavior, unsaid words hanging in the air. Elias forced a casual shrug. Just a stupid work text. She didn't look convinced. Something in her expression changed, suspicion flickering across her face like a slow-burning fuse. He swallowed hard, setting his phone down before she could ask anything else. "How was the store?" For a moment, it seemed like she would press further, but then she exhaled, shaking her head. "Busy as always." Elias nodded, forcing himself to relax. But as Claire walked past him, he felt it, an unease settling between them. A crack in the foundation of the life he had so carefully built, and he knew it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. Elias had always believed that secrets could be controlled, that as long as he was careful, methodical, he could keep his life intact. But deception wasn't a quiet thing. It moved like an infection, seeping into every corner, revealing itself in ways that could not always be anticipated. And Claire had begun to notice. The way Elias avoided her touch. The way he seemed absent even when he was right beside her. The way his phone was always within arm's reach, screen tilted away. She wasn't the type to jump to conclusions, but the signs were there, undeniable, a pattern forming beneath her fingertips like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't wanted to assemble. And then one evening, she found the message. Elias had been in the shower when Claire picked up his phone. He had left it on the nightstand, unlocked, a rare lapse in caution. The screen was still lit, a message from Nathan staring back at her. "Nathan * wish you were in my bed instead." For a moment, Claire didn't move. Her mind scrambled for explanations, excuses, but none came. The words were too direct, too damning. There was no misinterpretation here, no innocent explanation that could soften the truth. Her hands trembled as she set the phone back down, careful not to leave a trace. Her heart pounded, her stomach churned, but still, she didn't cry. Not yet. By the time Elias stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, Claire was sitting at the edge of the bed, back straight, fingers folded neatly in her lap, waiting. Elias barely spared her a glance as he crossed the room, rubbing at his damp hair. "Hey, babe, who is Nathan to you?" The question landed like a gunshot. Elias stilled, the air in the room shifting, growing heavier. He turned slowly, his expression carefully neutral. "What?" Claire's voice remained eerily steady. "Who is Nathan to you?" Elias felt his throat tighten. "Claire, what? Don't lie to me?" Her tone didn't rise, but the force behind it was unshakable. "I saw the message." His mind raced, grasping at damage control, at some way to explain this away, but there was nothing. He saw it in her eyes. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was certainty. His silence was answer enough. Claire inhaled sharply, pressing her lips together, as if physically holding herself together. "How long?" Elias swallowed, his mouth dry. "Claire, how long?" she repeated, each syllable a blade against the skin. He hesitated. "Too long." Claire let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "That long, huh?" Elias stepped forward instinctively, but she held up a hand, stopping him cold. "Don't, Claire, please, I need you to be honest with me." Her voice wavered now, cracks forming in the controlled facade. "Do you love him?" Elias' breath caught. It should have been an easy answer, a quick no to salvage what was left. But he hesitated. Claire closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. "That's all I needed to know." She stood abruptly, moving past him, out of the room. Elias reached for her arm, but she pulled away. "Claire, I can't do this right now." Her voice was thick with emotion, but she didn't yell, didn't collapse under the weight of betrayal. Instead, she straightened, took a deep breath, and walked away. Elias didn't follow. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what to say. That night, he sat alone in the dimly lit kitchen, a glass of whiskey untouched in front of him. The house was silent. Claire hadn't come back. His phone buzzed. "Nathan, I take it she knows." Elias closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. He should have felt relief now that the secret was out, now that the waiting was over. But all he felt was the weight of what he had lost. And the question that haunted him most wasn't whether Claire would forgive him. It was whether he even wanted her to.